Hey, Matthew chapter 6 is where we are this morning. Matthew chapter 6. If you have a Bible, find me there. Hey, we're going through the book of Matthew, and we've been in Matthew for a little while now. We'll probably be there for a little while longer. So we're just jumping into our study on the book of Matthew and the Sermon on the Mount today. Sermon on the Mount, longest sermon recorded by Jesus while he was on earth. He probably preached longer ones, but this is the longest one that we have recorded, and it's recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 is where we are today. I'll read it for us as we get started. Here's what it says in verse 19. It says, "Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? No one can serve two masters, since either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money." So if you're new here with us, if it's your first time, once again, we're so glad you're here. You might think that's an odd passage to preach on Mother's Day, but I've done worse, to be honest with you. One year on Mother's Day, the book we were in, the passage we were on, was about murder. So I preached about murder on Mother's Day. And I'm not afraid. So this is about money, right? Kind of about money. It's really about materialism. Do you hear that in this passage? Do you see that? It's really about this pursuit of materialism over spiritual benefit and spiritual concern. Treasures on earth, he says. Don't store up treasures on earth. What are treasures on earth? Well, in my mind, I first think about treasures on earth. I think about stuff. I got to be honest with you, and I got to confess that I like stuff. I like having the stuff that I need to have, and my wife says that makes me a little bit of a hoarder, and that's fine. Here's the thing. If I need a piece of rope this long, I want to have saved it at some point in my life and go out to the shed and find that right piece of rope for the job, and I don't care if I had to save it for 10 years in order to have it. I want to have it because I got to tie something up that's this long. So I want that piece of rope just long. Anybody else? Anybody elbowing neighbors or something? That's fine. You're in good company. And so the thing is about stuff, our treasures on earth. But the problem is that in America, we are addicted to stuff, to possessions. As a matter of fact, I looked at some statistics this week, and one of those is that the average American throws out 65 pounds of clothing a year. 65 pounds of clothing a year. I'm still wearing t-shirts from high school, but some of y'all are getting rid of your stuff. That's good. So here's another statistic. 1 in 10 Americans rents off-site storage. 1 in 10 people has so much stuff they can't even contain it at their homes, right? There are 50,000 storage facilities in America. That's 7.3 square feet of self-storage space per person in the United States. That means that every human being in America could stand under the canopy or under the roof of a self-storage facility if we had to. Sounds like a great business to get into if you're looking for an investment. Because Americans, we are addicted to things. We got to have all the stuff. And so the issue here is really not about money or about even possessions. It's about materialism. That's the issue at hand. Because the truth is you need a certain amount of things. You need some stuff. You need some stuff to do what you do every day and to live your life. And it's not bad to have things. It's bad to worship things. So you hear something about treasures in heaven versus treasures on earth, and you might be tempted to think, well, how much stuff can I have? Or you might think, well, how much money is too much money? How much money is like okay for a Christian to have? Well, boy, if you have this much, sinner, you're not doing it right, And that mentality is really kind of natural for us as Christians to ask those kind of questions. And what we're saying is this: give me a rule to follow, and I'll follow it. But the whole point of the Sermon on the Mount is this. These are heart issues. It's all about your heart. So the point is not how much money or how much stuff or how many storage units you have full of stuff. I mean, that's not the issue. The issue is, do you own those things or do they own you? And so, materialism. That's what he's been talking about. This heart issue. Materialism is a heart issue. He's talked about some bad things, right? Like murder in chapter 5 and adultery. And he says, you say you never committed those things. You've never broken those rules. Great. But what about in your heart? Have you committed murder in your heart? Have you committed adultery in your heart? Then you're guilty. And he says even the good things here in chapter 6, like praying, giving to the poor, fasting, these things, even those good things you do, if your heart's not right when you do them, then you get no reward for those things. Your reward is only what you get in the accolades of people here on earth. It's a materialism issue. Now, I know what you're thinking when you read, some of you, when you read treasures on earth, you're thinking like me, like if you looked at my bank account, you wouldn't describe it as a treasure. Maybe necessarily, right? Like, Pastor, good news, I don't got any treasure, all right? None. But I want to tell you this morning, that you, and I don't mean like you collectively, I mean you individually are rich. I don't mean that in a sentimental kind of, I mean financially, you are wealthy. You are. It might be news to you, but it's true. If you make, by the way, you can go to the website and figure this out for yourself. It's called howrichami.com. Type in your annual income, and it'll tell you what percentage of wealthy or how wealthy you are compared to the rest of the people on earth. So if you make $20,000 a year after taxes for a two-person household, that puts you in the top 18% of the richest people on earth. 82% of the world would be poorer than you. $20,000 a year for two people in a home, that would be difficult to survive. But you would be the top 18. So you can just imagine if you plug your income into that statistic, you would probably figure out that you are very rich. So when we say, that's right, Pastor, you get those rich people. Talk about them. Hammer them, Pastor. Listen, it's you. It's me. We are the rich people. And if you don't believe that materialism is an issue in the country we live in, then you are blind. It's all around us, and it's absolutely an issue. It's not an issue to have money. It's not an issue to be successful in business. It's good things. The issue is if you love that money. If the money owns you. As a matter of fact, Proverbs 13:22 says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. There's some famous rich people in the Bible that were good, that were faithful. They did good things with their money. So it's not a problem about having money. It's a problem with how you view that money. He says here that don't store up for yourselves. So you get that idea of yourselves, that idea of us stockpiling our possessions, our treasures on earth. He says here's the problem, because moth and rust can destroy them. And thieves can break in and steal them. That's true. In the ancient world, a lot of people put a lot of their wealth was in their clothing. It's not as common back then to have a wardrobe like we do today. A lot of people have a closet full of clothes. And matter of fact, you've been guilty of this, I'm sure, of going into that closet full of clothes and looking at everything and saying, man, I've got nothing to wear, right? Ever done that? Yeah, you have. You've also probably, by the way, gone into a pantry full of food and said, man, there's nothing to eat in this house. Or a refrigerator. But back then, people would have these, clothing was very, very expensive. So if you had several sets of clothing, you were pretty wealthy. And that wealth could be wiped out by a single moth with an appetite, It's also rust. And that's what's crazy. In the ancient world, they had silver and gold and precious metals, but they weren't very pure. So other elements would get mixed into that gold and those coins, and they could oxidize and rust. So literally your wealth could be rusting away in the basement or something. Nowadays, we don't have to worry about, our money rusting. But what about inflation? Anybody? Yeah, our earthly riches are vulnerable to corruption. And then if you store up that wealth, if you accumulate all these possessions, then you have to protect them because somebody out there would love to relieve you of your possessions. Thieves break in and steal them. So even if you accumulate all these things, now you have the burden of protecting them. That's what he says, moth, rust, thieves. Let me add a few to that this morning. How about tornadoes? Anybody watching the weather this week? You accumulate all these possessions, and one tornado could carry them all to a different county in a moment. Could be gone. Fires could sweep through your house, and all your possessions would be gone. All those treasures you stacked up would be gone. Or a flood. A flood could happen, and after Katrina, I went down to New Orleans for a week and helped clean out these houses in the third ward down there where they had like 19 feet of seawater on top of them. And what happens when a house is completely submerged in water is all the stuff floats up to the ceiling and kind of collects in the middle. When the water comes down, it just drops down. So it looks literally like you took a house and just shook it up like this and then put it back down. And all their earthly possessions in that home completely destroyed. Nothing salvageable. That nasty water, it just corrodes and corrupts everything. You really can't clean anything. And in one of these houses, I remember having a moment where I was thinking about the possessions that I have stockpiled for myself. And it was when I opened a linen closet. And there was just all these stacks of neatly folded but moldy, nasty sheets and blankets and comforters that were just stacked floor to ceiling in this linen closet. I remember thinking, all these things that we value right now, we stockpile right now, they'll be gone one day. They'll be gone. Like the house or the house that you love or have put time and money into, it's going to rot one day. It's going to fall down. It's going to need to be rebuilt or remodeled. That car that's at that dealership right now that you wish you could have, you would love to have, you've been wanting to have it. Listen, it'll be a pile of rust in somebody's field one day. It'll be gone. It'll be gone. It'll be over with. I had the same thought, and I had the same thought, and I was talking to somebody here recently about that. Every time I go to an estate sale, like all you stuff you own will one day be out on your front lawn, and strangers will be rummaging through it, looking for a bargain, and they'll be purchasing them at a discount price. So when you think about your possessions in that sense, it kind of makes us prioritize a little bit where we put our treasures. And if they don't get destroyed, they will at least fall out of fashion. I mean, right? Think about maybe the first time you bought an iPhone or something. It was the hot thing, right? Until what? The next year. And then another one came out, and then the yours was garbage, right? Like you paid $1,000 for a phone, and then a year later, who cares? Or like when you were a kid on Christmas, you had to have that thing, and you played with it for a couple of months, maybe, and then you were over it. And we're still that way as adults, right? We get that thing, and then the shine wears off, and we want something else. We stock up these things. And Jesus told a few parables, and there's two in Luke I want to mention this morning about possessions and things. And by the way, in the New Testament, Jesus spoke about prayer about 500 times, right? Because prayer is important, right? You know how many times he spoke about money? 2,000 times in the New Testament. 2,000 times. And by the way, so if you're new here or whatever, if you're first time with us, listen, there's not going to be a sales pitch at the end, okay? I'm not going to talk about money and that brings me to my next point. Give money to this effort. There's no pitch at the end. We don't talk about money very often. We just preach whatever comes up next in the passage, and that's what we talk about. So if you're here today, and maybe you're new to church or you haven't been to church in a while, and you're like, yeah, those Christians, they're always talking about money. Well, last week we talked about prayer. Next week we'll talk about worry. We're just going through the book, and this is where we land. But a couple of these parables that Jesus talked about, and Luke particularly, he gives a parable of a rich fool. That's what it's called. And it's about a man whose crops had done really well, made a lot of money. And he thinks to himself, you know what? I'm going to store this grain up. I'll build some new barns, tear my barns down, build them up big. and I'll sit back and just enjoy the easy life, live off of it. And Jesus says to him, it's in Luke chapter 12, verse 20, but God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded of you, and then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God. Isn't that interesting? All these things we store up, somebody else is going to enjoy them. Somebody else is going to spend them. Somebody else is going to buy them at a garage sale or an estate sale one day. And then probably the most neglected of Jesus' parables is in Luke chapter 16. And it's a parable of the shrewd manager, or you might have heard it, the dishonest manager. And it's kind of a wild story. And you think, why did Jesus tell this story? But it's about a guy who was in charge of another man's household. So all of his business enterprises, he had a manager in charge of all of that. And that manager gets called into the boss's office, so to speak, called into the owner's office, and says, you're going to have to give an account. You know, hey, you're going to have to come in here soon and give me an account because I don't think you've been doing a good job. Which terrifies the manager. And so he comes up with a scheme. He's like, I'm going to lose my job. I'm too old to go back to manual labor. I'm not going to go to the street corner and beg. How can I provide for myself? So he comes up with a scheme. He calls in some of the debtors that owed his master, the owner of that household, who owed him money or owed him debts, and he reduced their debts. So he said, you owe my master 100 measures of olive oil. Okay, listen, sit down quickly, write down 50, and I'll sign it. Another guy, you owe him wheat. Okay, look, you owe 100 measures of wheat, let's make it 80. And so you're like, wait, why is Jesus telling us about a guy who is embezzling? Right? Why is he endorsing theft? Well, he's not. He's saying, look, this guy figured out that a day of reckoning was coming, and so he used worldly wealth to make friends for himself that would take care of him later. Verse 19 of Luke chapter 16 says, and I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of worldly wealth, so that when it fails, they may welcome you into eternal dwellings. So the picture is then, use the resources you have at your disposal to make an impact so that when you get to heaven one day, there will be people there that welcome you at the gate because you got them there. You'll have friends in eternity. And you say, but but he stole. It's theft. It wasn't his money to do that with. And I think that's also the point. You know, any money you have in your pocket or your bank account right now is there because God has allowed you to possess that. I mean, that's the attitude of a believer. It's all God's. It's not mine. It's all His. And He's given it to me to take care of and to do good with while I'm here on earth. And I can't take it with me. I'm going to do good and make Him happy with what He's given me. And by the way, if you want God to give you more than what you have, here's a bit of advice. Do good with what He's already given you. I mean, if somebody comes in and asks you for a raise and they've not taken care of what you've given them, you're not going to give them a raise. So the point is that money, those possessions, that stuff, it's not yours. It's God's, and He's allowed you to have it. It's a stewardship you're supposed to take care of and use for good. He says, store up then for yourselves treasures, not on earth, treasures in heaven. What's a treasure in heaven? Well, I heard two definitions of a treasure in heaven. One of those was, a treasure in heaven is everything that you can take with you to heaven when you die. And then somebody else said, well, you really can't take anything with you when you die, but you can send treasure on ahead of you to wait for you until you get there. Either one of those are pretty good. Treasures in heaven. Here's some treasures in heaven. Faithfulness. Faithfulness to God stores up treasures in heaven. Good deeds. Good deeds. Service to God stores up treasures in heaven. But here's the thing I think is the most important when you think about treasures in heaven. And it has to do with what that dishonest manager parable is about. If you want to store up things in heaven, here's the thing you ought to invest your money in to store up in heaven. Souls. The souls of men and women. Don't you think God treasures souls? You better believe He does. He sent His Son Jesus to purchase the souls of men and women here on earth with His blood. God treasures people. So invest then in things that get people to heaven. Invest in that party that will greet you at the gate when you get there. because you put them there with your life and with your efforts. One of those is, at Southern Baptist, we have what's called the cooperative program, where we all send as Southern Baptist churches voluntarily a portion of our money to different efforts, different missionary efforts, and training ministers, planting churches in North America, international missionaries all over the world. And so I just checked last year's International Mission Board statistics. As part of the money we already give, and then towards December, January, we take up a big missions offering that goes to this effort as well. But last year, in 2021, pandemic year, Southern Baptist, through International Mission Board, planted 18,380 churches internationally. That was, amen, that's a good thing to clap for. Those churches baptized 80,587 people, and a total number of new believers of 144,322 souls, people who'll be in heaven one day because of the missionaries that went and because of the churches and the people that supported them and sent them to do that task. Those, my friends, are treasures in heaven. And here's what's good about treasures in heaven. There ain't no moths in heaven, okay? No rust, no thieves. If they're thieves, they're reformed thieves, right? They're saved thieves. That's the only kind of thieves there are in heaven. But treasures in heaven are not vulnerable to corruption. They're safe. They're safe. They have the greatest return. And you're not going to lose that investment, even if there's a recession or a depression or a downturn in the economy. It's the way to invest. The issue, I think, for us then is generosity. How do we be generous with what God has given us, faithfully stewarding what He's given us? So I think that's the point. Use your worldly treasures, your earthly treasures, to purchase treasures in heaven. Could we boil it down to that this morning? Here's one thing it requires. In order to be generous, it requires margin, financial margin. Here's what I mean. In order to give, you got to have. Now listen, you can store up treasures in heaven without giving money, 100%. If you say, I got nothing to give, listen, you can go serve somebody, you can help somebody, share the gospel with your neighbor, you can call somebody and encourage them. These things store up treasures in heaven as well. When we're talking about earthly treasures, but the heavenly treasures, generosity then, I think, requires us to have something to give if we're going to give. So it's not don't have things, it's have enough things that you can help somebody when they're in need. And here's the part where I'm going to step on some toes this morning, so get ready. Are you ready? Who wore their boots this morning? Who's ready? Nobody. All right, praise God. All right, that's awesome. Well, you better get ready. No. Some people, some Christians, can't give and can't be generous because they don't have the financial margin, the extra to give, for a few different reasons. One of those is because of debt. Debt. Debt cripples generosity. A lot of people would like to give. They say, I can't afford to help somebody. I can't afford to be generous. Well, maybe it's because you're living in a house you can't afford. Maybe because you're driving cars that you really don't need. And that debt is diminishing your capability of being generous. Make good financial decisions and you'll be able to share with those in need. You'll be able to help people who need it. I know other Christians who work jobs that don't get paid very much, and they say, well, it gets the bills done and it's easy. I don't have to think much about it, so I'm good. Well, maybe you need to work a harder job where you can get paid more so you can help other people when they're in need. Maybe the secret is for you is work harder. Maybe it's spend less. Maybe it's better investment decisions. Maybe it's work less. So I may be telling somebody to work more. I may be telling somebody to work less this morning. Maybe you work a job that makes you so busy that you can't even store up treasures in heaven because you spend all your time working. Maybe you should work a different job that will enable you to serve. I should love to help out with that, but I'm always working. Listen, you got to work. Work's a good thing. Y'all are going to be saying that on Monday morning, I know, but it is a good thing. It's a blessing. If you got a job and you're able to provide for your family, praise God for that. It's a good thing. But But you can work too much. Neglect your family, neglect your church, neglect the service to the kingdom that God would have you to do. So make good decisions. Matter of fact, Ephesians says this. Ephesians chapter 4 says this, verse 28. Let the thief steal no longer. That's good advice, right? If you're a thief, quit it. But then he goes on, he says this. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands so that he has something to share with anyone in need. Right? So it's good to work. It's good to save. It's good to be financially secure so that you're able to help those and make sure those things don't own you. And he says this because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So the point is not, if you put your treasure here, then your heart will follow. The point is, your heart is already at that place where your treasure is. What are the things that your calendar and your bank statement say about your priorities? If somebody were to look at those two things in your life objectively, what would they determine were your priorities in this life? What were you living for? That's the test, right? Where your treasure is, Jesus says that's where your heart is. Tim Keller, who's a pretty famous preacher, he has a quote that says this: money flows effortlessly to that which is its God. Right? Like, what are those things in your life that you don't mind spending money on? You're happy to spend money on. You can't wait to write the check or to hand the cash over. Those things then would be things that you love. And maybe that's where your heart is at. Maybe that's where your heart is at. But if you put your heart in heaven, then you'll store up treasures there instead. He says the eye is the lamp of the body. And that might be kind of confusing. It sounds kind of confusing, but if you kind of think it through, it's not too bad. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be darkness. So, here's the conclusion. If the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? So that is, the eye is the lamp of the body, then the heart is the lamp of the soul. The light within you. If your soul lens is darkened, then your whole being, your whole person, if your heart is dark, your whole being is dark. If your treasures are on this worldly stuff, then your heart is in darkness. Then he says this to conclude. Verse 24, he says, no one can serve two masters. He will either hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. Now, he didn't say two bosses, because some people have two jobs right now. You know what? Probably a lot of us in this life have had two bosses at one time. You know, or you might have one job, but you got a boss at home, and then you go to work. You know, I don't know. He didn't say two bosses. He said two masters. This is a master and slave relationship. And the slave does whatever the master says to do. They're 100% devoted to the master. He says you can't have two masters, you can only have one. If you try to have two, you'll do what one says and you won't do what the other says. You'll be disobedient to one and obedient to the other. And isn't that interesting? Here we go, boiling this all the way down to something that's an age-old issue throughout the Bible, and that is idolatry. Who is your master? Isn't that true? Who is your master in this life? Who do you follow no matter what? Is it Jesus? Or is your bank account your master? Or your hobbies your master? Is a person or a relationship, is that your priority? Or is Jesus your number one priority? That's really what's at issue here. And let me just say, because I'm not done stepping on toes yet, I see people sacrifice things in order to make money that they would never sacrifice in order to go to church. Like, what was the last excuse you had for missing church? And would you use that same excuse to call in sick to work or to miss work? Well, why not? Is because work is more important than your spiritual life? Is it financial gain that's more important than your spiritual life? I hope not. But here, let me ask that question again. Who is your master? Is it Jesus? Is it Jesus? If you're like, well, it's Jesus, but it's, like, oh, I follow Jesus. I just also follow the market, or whatever. You can't follow both. He just said, if you'll love the one, and you'll despise the other. You got to pick. Jesus will not be second place in your life. He absolutely won't be. And a lot of times as Christians, especially Western Christianity, we say, okay, well, this is the box in my life, the compartment that I put my Christianity, my faith, and my spiritual life. It's over here in this box. And, hey, Sunday morning, I'm going to come open the box and dig around in there, and we'll sing and we'll pray and we'll do that. And then, 12 o'clock. All right, shut the box, go back to my life. And here's the rest of my life over here. And every once in a while, in a crisis or something, we go, no, it's fine. I got a box for that. We open that box and we rummage around in our Christianity, our faith box. But that's not biblical Christianity. Biblical Christianity is this. You open that faith box, that Christianity box, and you take the rest of your life and you put it in that box. And then you leave the lid open. That's what it means to serve the master. So in closing, let me ask you, who's your master today? Is God your master? Is he your number one? Whatever he says go, is he in control? If not, then you have put something else in God's place. And the Bible calls that idolatry. You're worshiping that other thing. Your heart is not in heaven. It's whatever that other thing is. It's on that. And when you come to Jesus and you ask Christ into your heart and your life, you say, you are the master. You're on the throne. I work for you. You're the boss. And I serve you. And we can do that because God sent his son, Jesus, out of his generosity to die on a cross, to pay for a debt that he did not owe, but that we owed. And that debt is our sins. Our sin has caused a debt you could never pay on your own. The only way you could pay it is if you spent an eternity in hell paying for it. That's what it costs. But God sent his son Jesus to purchase your soul because he loved and treasured you. Not just people, he loves you and he treasures you. And Jesus died for you. That's the truth. And that's a good master to serve. Have you come to the master? Have you surrendered your life to him? Have you put him on the throne and made him number one in your life? If not, would you do that today? Would you do it right now before you leave this room? I'm going to give us an opportunity right now as we just close our eyes for a moment and bow our heads to have a time of prayer and a time to focus. Maybe it's not money for you, but maybe it's something else that you've allowed to get on the throne of your life, and it's taken the place of the one who belongs there, Jesus. And whatever it is today, I want to ask you, have you ever put Jesus on that throne in your life, made him the master, made him the boss? If not, right where you're at this morning, your head bowed and eyes closed, just so you can tune out all the distractions around you, would you pray something along these lines this morning? Would you pray to God and ask him to come into your heart and forgive your sins and give your life to him? Make him the Lord of your life, the master. Not even just the boss, because you can get new bosses, but make him the master of your life. And you don't have to have all the right words. You don't have to say the right thing. He knows your heart. You express something along those lines to God this morning in faith from your heart to the heart of God. Listen, he hears you, he listens, and he will save you today if you'll allow him.